أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Dear respected professors, lecturers, researchers, our speaker for today, and all our guests, we welcome us once again to this important occasion, a presentation, a discussion, scholarly discussion, and for us to have a presentation from the Quran al-Kareem as the opening dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this from us as an act of ibadah. Therefore, I want to invite Brother Abdul Kareem Makalo to read for us from the Quran al-Kareem. فليتفضل مشكورا. أهلا وسهلا. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن شاء الله سأتفضل بقراءة صفحة من القرآن في آخر سورة الحج برواية الإمام راشد النافع رحمه الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس ضرب مثل فاستمعوا له. إن الذين تدعون من دون الله لن يخلقوا ذبابا ولو اجتمعوا له، وإن يسلبهم الذباب شيئا لا يستنقذوه منه، ضعف الطالب والمطلوب. ما قدروا الله حق قدره، إن الله لقوي عزيز. الله يصطفي من الملائكة رسلا ومن الناس، إن الله سميع بصير. يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم، وإلى الله ترجع الأمور. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اركعوا واسجدوا واعبدوا ربكم وافعلوا الخير لعلكم تفلحون. وجاهدوا في الله حق جهاده، هو اجتباكم وما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج، ملة أبيكم إبراهيم، هو سماكم المسلمين من قبل وفي هذا ليكون الرسول شهيدا عليكم وتكونوا شهداء على الناس. فأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واعتصموا بالله هو مولاكم، فنعم المولى ونعم نعم النصير. صدق الله العظيم.
We are happy for his effort and contribution. While he was reciting, another Hafiz came in. So you're welcome. Dr. Hassan Suleiman is one of our lecturers. Before we proceed, I want to do a brief introduction of some of our professors in our gathering. We have our lecturers, we have our PG students, we have our visitors as well. The purpose of coming together is for us to share knowledge. As one of the reasons why universities established, we generate knowledge, we also share the knowledge in our teaching and research. And myself, I have also attended some of the presentation of our dear guest, Sheikh Muhammad Nuruddin Lemu, and I saw his approach, I saw his methodology, I saw his presentation, and I personally felt that it's going to be very, very useful for us. Even though this is what we do here, so when a visitor comes, we are always ready to also listen to our visitors and to see his own perspective, his own understanding, and his own approach. So that will also help us, or rather confirm, or increase us in knowledge as well. So without further ado, I want to recognize the presence of our dear Professor Nisawi in our midst. Thank you, Prof, for coming. I also want to recognize the presence of my former HOD, Dr. Fuad Sawari, also Professor Dr. Fuad Sawari. Thank you for coming. I also want to recognize the presence of Dr. Akma, so head of our research and contemporary studies. Thanks for coming. Dr. Hassan Suleiman is also here. Thanks for coming. My dear friend, I've forgotten the name, he's one of our lecturers, so thanks for coming as well. And my also colleague, we are students together in the hostel, and we also became a lecturer at the same time. So we know how we struggle. Sometimes we tell our students, just struggle, and Allah will barakah your effort, inshallah. So, and my dear friend also is our Imam at the Mahalla. He's now a lecturer as well. I've forgotten his name as well. So thanks for coming. And all our postgraduate students that are here today. So we want you to be here to listen and also broaden your approach. So Maqasid is very relevant and is going to be useful, especially for researchers. So without further ado, I want to perhaps take my microphone. I will not want Prof to move around to give us an opening remark briefly. As Prof is being known to be, I was traveling somewhere within Malaysia, and somebody happened to know me to be a lecturer in IUM. He said, "Oh, you know Prof Nisawi?" I said, "I know." So, "Oh, father of Maqasid." So I said, "You don't have to do the introduction." So, so this is one of the blessings that I give us in this university. We have professors. And as much as Prof is, in terms of Maqasid, Prof is still interested to attend. So how come you don't understand? So because for every time you go, you see perspectives, you see methodologies, and you add to your wealth of knowledge. So Prof, please, our Dean is supposed to be here today. Dean has Dean Council. So Dean told me, any senior professor around, just tell him to do on my behalf, whether HOD or any of the senior that comes. So there are other trainings today, so that is why we couldn't. But because Sheikh will be traveling very soon, and we can't afford not to bring him to our Kuliya, which is the loop, the center of the university, before he travels. That is why we had the program today. So for the Mashkura, Prof, opening remark.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Surprise for me. First say that I am neither the father nor the mother of Maqasid. There is a long chain of scholars and minds throughout the history of Islamic civilization who have been building up in many fields, including this area called Maqasid. I'm just a student in that area, but I was just commenting or chatting with our brother here, so when I saw the tree, so I said that I have been using the metaphor of the tree to explain Maqasid to my students, using also other kinds of diagrams or whatever. But anyway, I was listening the other day to this couple. His wife, first actually, I did not know him, I never heard of him. Sorry to say that. But I attended her talk in the program in Banquet Hall, I think last Monday, if I'm not mistaken. Then I really was very impressed by the way she was presenting and explaining the subject to the audience. I wanted to get into contact with her, then I asked one of our brothers, can you please get me the number of this gentle lady? He told me, okay, I will try. Then he told me, after she finished, I went to that room on the side and find this gentleman, whom I didn't know, sitting with one of our ex-students. And Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum. And after a while, the brother came, he told me, by the way, this is her husband. So, and then we came to communicate with each other, knowing each other, the ta'arafu. And ta'aruf, I discovered that we were thinking in similar lines from almost the same horizon or the same perspective. And really I was amazed by the work he has been doing. I came to know later what kind of publication they have been doing, and this Sharia intelligence, which really is an effort to translate the practicality of Maqasid and make it easily accessible to people who are outside the field of specialization. And I think this is a very important step. In the case of myself and others who are teaching in the department, maybe we have been within the parameters of the academic qawalib. So we have formats, and we are perhaps imprisoned in those formats. So he is giving us a window out in order to see how we can help others outside the field to make sense of this important idea or doctrine of Maqasid, which is just one dimension of Islamic scholarship. Thank you so much. I hope you will be enjoying what he is going to say.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof, for that beautiful giving me the microphone. One of our lecturer, senior colleague, my wakil, he came in. I said, Professor Dr. Abdul Hamid Muhammad Ali Zaru. So, Khatib, Muhaddith, you are welcome, sir. So now I want to go straight to the point, and that is the presentation by Sheikh Muhammad Lemu. And Prof has just said what I told him, and he can confirm that the way you have brought the Maqasid and the approach, I think is very, very interesting. So I never discussed with Prof, and if Prof would have said what I told him, then I think he should do more. He should continue doing what he's doing. May Allah bless his effort. But briefly, I just want to tell us that Sheikh Muhammad Nuruddin Lemu is an esteemed Islamic scholar, educator, and interfaith advocate. He served as the Director of Research and Training at Dawa Institute of Nigeria and Assistant General Secretary of Islamic Education Trust. Mina. He holds BSc in Agriculture from Ahmadu Bello University and MSc Resources Management from University of Edinburgh. So a fellow of African Leadership Initiative and Aspen Institute. Sheikh Lemo has trained scholars, youths, and community leaders across 20 countries, and that is why he came to Malaysia today. He was nominated by the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs to the 2014 National Conference through lectures, media engagement, training programs. He promotes critical thinking, interreligious dialogue, and ethical leadership rooted in Islamic principles. So today we'll be listening to Sheikh Muhammad Nuruddin Lemo on triangulation in Ijtihad, application of Maqasid al-Shari'ah for critical thinking professionals that we are. So the floor is yours, Prof. Sheikh.
Jazakallahu khairan, Brother Saeed Busari. I'd like to first thank all of you for this opportunity. I'm most honored by the caliber of those who have, in their busy schedules, had the humility to be here. It is inspiring. I pray that within the time available, inshallah, there is something that we have done that would be of benefit to the department and to the university. So I'll start, inshallah. There's a lot to cover. Fortunately, they say a word is enough for the wise. And so with some of the slides, I would actually go a bit faster because I'll leave the slides with Brother Busari for anybody who is interested. Inshallah. It was a great pleasure meeting Professor Al-Masawi. You know, people, the moment I saw him, I couldn't hold back my tears the day we first met, because I read Ibn Ashur's work that he translated. I appreciated the footnotes. I then read more of his writings, and so when you see a teacher you never met, you say Alhamdulillah for that opportunity. That yeah, inshallah, with some of our teachers, we pray if Allah gives us Jannah, we will meet together there and we can discuss more when we get there, inshallah. So, alhamdulillah. So we're looking here at triangulation in Ijtihad. In research, as some of you already know, triangulation basically is using different approaches to verify the results of one approach. And so if we want to know whether 3 times 7 is 21, we can divide 21 by 3 and see whether it gives us 7. We can add 3 plus 3 plus 3 7 times and see whether it gives us 21. In other words, there's more than one way to verify, to see if there's corroboration. And this has become more important, as we will see later, when we are living in a world that is full of change, and the change is rapid and it's very diverse, and so the fatwas of one context do not necessarily apply elsewhere, and it's sometimes dangerous to do a copy-paste approach, because as you already know, Islamic jurisprudence is not exactly like mathematics. Mathematics is not concerned about context. 2 times 5 is 10, whether you're on the moon, whether you're dead, whether you're alive, whether you're human. But what is the medicine for malaria depends on the subject. You know, what's their age? Are they pregnant? What other medication are they on? And so we find Islamic jurisprudence more like medicine than like mathematics. When it comes to response to context. So I'm hoping, inshallah, that this presentation would be simplified. This is how we present it to professionals. So what I'm saying here, in a sense, is really to let you know what we do as opposed to present it to you, and hopefully your input would help guide us, since alhamdulillah, we've been blessed with the with the team that Allah has created a hub for here. But I'll also be using language that we use with professionals, and so you will forgive me when some of this simplification looks oversimplified. This course is prepared for non-specialists. It's just for Muslims who care about Islam, but who, yeah, they know Salat and whatever, but if you say Maslaha Istihsan, they get lost. If you say Al-Ada Muhakkama, they don't know what you're talking about. If you say Usul al-Fiqh, never heard of that one. But they care about Islam. They want to make sure their lives are aligned with what is halal. They want to be useful to the Ummah, and they know the basics that every Muslim should know about Islam. So we call this subject the subject of the major critical thinking toolboxes. So here you can look at the toolbox of a carpenter and look at all his tools. You go to another carpenter and there are some tools he doesn't have. Yeah, so this person is like a mujtahid. He's got his toolbox in his own madhab. Another one has a different toolbox. And depending on the job, you may actually find that another madhab, like Hanafi, is able to solve more contemporary financial issues than a Maliki or a Hanbali madhab. In other words, some toolboxes have tools that are more versatile than others. And so it's introducing the field of Ijtihad for Muslim professionals. We call it Sharia intelligence, in the same vein as we will have emotional intelligence or social intelligence. Just the key things of, just the way you'll have to be intelligent about emotions, to be intelligent about Sharia. Sharia as a way of life, not just Islamic law, but more than just law. It's trying to help them understand how muftis think. Yeah, how does a mufti think? Beyond just tolerance of diversity. Tolerance means I'm managing. I'd rather not have to deal with it, but I would need the adab of ikhtilaf to tolerate your opinion. To go beyond just tolerance, to respect. I respect you, but to go beyond respect to appreciation of the diversity. That there's a rahmah in that diversity. That in that diversity you find another madhab has a solution you didn't have. Another madhab lives in a part of the world where they face some challenges you have not yet faced. And how they solve their problems become helpful to you when you come to face the same challenges. And the same thing, not just the opinions, but also the methods. This presentation will focus on how this course, Sharia Intelligence, is taught while hopefully addressing the main question of triangulation in Ijtihad, and we will inshallah apply it to some case studies. A big challenge we're having is, traditionally, Islam, at least Sunni Islam, doesn't have a clergy. You know, in Christianity they've got a clergy, and Jews have rabbis. But traditional Sunni has not had a clergy. Unfortunately, the way our ulama are being taught, we are evolving a clergy. And there's a widening gap between church and state, or in our case, mosque and state, where the clergy, the ulama of the deen, are knowing less and less about umuru dunyakum, about worldly affairs. And they just study usul or hadith or, ulumuddin and those narrow subjects. They are not able to write on medicine. So the kind of things that Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Qayyim or Ibn Hazm or Al-Ghazali would write on this area and write on that area, our people and the nature of knowledge today is narrowing down. And unfortunately, just as they are narrowing down, Muslim professionals are becoming more and more secular. We don't recognize the secular. We consider all as already integrated. But unfortunately, many Muslim professionals do not see a link between their professions and the deen. So what we find is very unintegrated domains with a lot of intellectual silos and ghettos, where experts in one area basically just talk to each other, and the need for some kind of a Bayt al-Hikmah, a translation house. Something that helps the professionals appreciate what the ulama have to offer that they are lacking, but something that helps the ulama appreciate what the professionals have which they are lacking. Otherwise, look during the time of COVID, ulama talking as if they know anything about viruses and say, no, forget about it, like not knowing who to listen to. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ, but who are the أهل الذِّكْر on issues to do with epidemics? But then the doctors not knowing how to frame what they want to offer in such a way that Muslims would appreciate that the professionals know the deen also and are not just going secular. There are exceptions, of course. British Islamic Medical Association. You look at their websites and how they responded to the cynicism that people had about COVID vaccines. You would find they did something in the same vein as some of the other ulama, where in responding to a criticism, they would approach it from an usul, qawaid, maqasid perspective that makes you feel these are not just medical people, they also know the deen and it's rooted in our values. We work on trying to train, create more awareness of the basics of the process of ijtihad, and I'll say why this is important to everybody. For the ulama, it is important for them to appreciate the role of professionals, because many professionals are not doing something secular. They are what Sherman Jackson describes as the Islamic secular. It's secular, but it is Islamic. It's secular only because it is not the territory of clergy. So you do not hear the ulama discussing agriculture and defense. That's not usually the area they study. A lot of these areas, however, are critical for the realization of Maqasid. If you pick a group of people like waste management and garbage collectors, okay, what concerns the Muslim scholar with garbage collection apart from the position of nadhifa and cleanliness as a part of faith? However, if people who are taking garbage and the rubbish and sewage, if they were to stop working for 1 month, what would happen? Yeah, diseases. 1 month, nobody came to take the garbage, we would have cholera, we would have typhoid. People would die. People would die. Because something as critical among the daruriyat as hifdhul nafs, the preservation of life, because people would die, it is a fard to remove that problem. Ad-darar yuzal. And it's a fardu kifaya. Not all of us have to be involved in garbage collection, but some people have to be involved in garbage collection. Garbage collection, not just the burying of the dead, but the clearing of waste becomes a fardu kifaya for some people to be involved in, and it absolves the rest of us. But if those people don't play that role, it becomes a fardu ayn, because people would die, and Sharia doesn't belittle the position of life. But what happens if the people who provide electricity are to stop working for 1 hour? What happens in hospitals when life support can no more give life? What happens when banks can no more transfer money where it's required? And so what we find is these professionals that are in what they believe is purely secular, they are fulfilling what Sharia considers as fardu kifaya responsibilities. These are completely religious responsibilities. And it is important that they realize that their jobs are in alignment with the Maqasid of Sharia, and they take it with the same ihsan and itqan that is required of a Muslim in any other field. And so we cannot leave the professionals behind, because these are professions that raise civilizations. The professionals also do not feel that their areas are legitimately Islamic. They look at it as, I'm doing dunya, I don't have time for da'wah. Whereas in reality, we don't want the doctor to leave the hospital. We want, you're saving life. if you left, we can't do your job. Yeah, especially in countries where you don't even have enough doctors. It's already a fardu ayn for the leadership to make sure that more people are in that profession to prevent death. So many of them don't feel they are relevant or essential or imperative to Islamic civilizational renewal or societal progress. There are various indices of measuring the advancement of society, whether the Human Development Index, Maqasid Index, etc. Who pushes that index forward is the professionals. So when we look at how do we grow as a civilization, some of these key people for those areas of the economy, the security, food security, all these other areas, they don't think that they are doing anything Islamic. So there's the need to equip the Muslim professionals with the basic critical thinking tools that are relevant to their specializations, but also to help them know how to consult experts in the fields of usul where fatwas or guidance is required beyond what they can handle. It is important that the professionals appreciate who to ask when in need. Because many people within the Muslim community are like villagers who go to the hospital. He takes his pregnant wife to see a doctor. And the doctor says, but I'm a dentist. And the villager says, oh, but you're a doctor, right? Yeah, and you can help my pregnant wife. Most people don't know specializations. The moment you've got enough beard and a turban and enough Arabic, whether the topic is on euthanasia or sukuk or wudu, like every question goes to just anybody that's called an imam. And so the need for professionals to know, who do you go to? What is the, what's the specializations? The ulumul Quran and usulul tafsir person is good at what? The muhaddith is good at what? The faqih is good at what? And even in fiqh, what's the specialization? Is it in family law? Is it in siyasa? Is it in areas of ijtihad? The need for the professionals to know who to ask when in need. Who's the specialist? Especially today, because specialists are people who know a lot about a little area. Yeah, they are not jack of all trades in that sense. But, sorry? Okay, it's also good for the profession. There's the kind of case, this one needs a doctor, this one needs a surgeon. But in over 80 to 90% of accidents, it's just a sprain, a bruise. Should you wash it? Should your hands be clean? It's not requiring surgery for every case. The other problem is that the majority of our local ulama, those who didn't study usul, qawaid and these subject areas, and most professionals have not gotten adequate grounding in usul, even the ABCD of usul, even what is usulul fiqh. The moment you get out of some circles, I met a brother, he came for an interview, very active on social media, da'wah, giving judgments, condemn this group, like all of that type of thing. Said, what is usulul fiqh? Usulul fiqh, usul is like the roots, the principles of fiqh. What does that mean? Things like aqidah and adab. And he didn't know the meaning of what it, he just usul, fiqh, think about it. I asked him, have you heard of Amal Ahl al-Madina? Yeah. What is Amal Ahl al-Madina? It's the practice of the people of a town, like a city. It's like a city like where? Like this city. Okay. You didn't want to start asking more questions. It was already clear. This is not his area, even though we were in Maliki territory. But one thing that many people among the local ulama and professionals who have not studied this is they flip istishab. Okay, al-asl fil ashya libaha, they flip it the other way around. So you will hear somebody saying, oh, this one, well, we do not have any evidence for it in the Quran and Sunnah, so it is better for us to say it is haram. Yeah, not al-asl is ibaha, we have no evidence for prohibition. No, they are looking at a mu'amala and saying the absence of evidence in the Quran and Sunnah means the default judgment is haram. Then you find what we, a reactionary form of jurisprudence. We will say al-ada muhakkama, but al-Western ada is haram by default. Yeah. So we find some biases and reactions. Binary, Islamic this, as if when we don't put the word Islamic automatically means it's un-Islamic. Western this, as if Western is not just the ada of the West, which is ibaha by default. The way a lot of Jahiliyyah things were ibaha by default, unless they conflicted with the Quran and Sunnah. And so the need to proactively look at Islamic sources for guidance instead of just thinking that everything outside is haram and whatever the outside want, ours should be the opposite. Specialists in application of usulul fiqh are like an endangered keystone species. You know when you say the Malay tiger or Bengal tiger is an endangered species? Yeah, we do not have enough. A lot of people are just doing DIY, do you to yourself fatwa. They don't know who to talk to. They don't even know there's a specialist to be asked. Yeah. It's like you requiring a cardiologist, but you don't even know that there's a field called cardiology. Yeah. All you just know is there's doctors, there's dentists, there's this, but you don't know about that field. In presenting this, we let participants who we are training know that usulul fiqh is like a big city. It's like KL. You just drive through the main road of the city. You don't say, I know the city. But you will not also say, I don't know KL. But you should be humble enough to know that, okay, the purpose of this is to generate curiosity for more and respect that this is a big field. Because sometimes if you don't expose people to a field, they think the little they know is all that needs to be known. We use a lot of metaphors and analogies from other fields. Yasir, what's that? Allah yuridu bikum al-yusra, right? Allah wants ease. This subject is too important for usulis. Yeah. We need to simplify it for people who need it for first aid purposes. And so, how do we simplify this subject for people who are not experts in the area? We use a lot of metaphors, as we will see soon. One metaphor is that this is a first coating of paint. If somebody wants to paint this room, what they do is they will paint first coating, then they will let it dry. Then you come with second coating of paint. You let it dry. Every coating, it gets thicker and it gets smoother and it gets more beautiful. And so it's to let them know that this is just first coating of this subject. So don't think that because you have heard some new terminology, you know the subject. No, this is just first coating. Gives you an idea of the length and size of the room, but not enough for you to say, I'm okay, everything is fine. And the main interest is in how, not the what, how jurists use critical thinking tools. It's the difference between a driver and a mechanical engineer. You can get a student who studied mechanical engineering, first class. Ask him about a car, he tells you everything. Tell him drive, he says, I don't know how to drive. You can get a driver, he knows how to drive, but when you ask him, tell me about parts of the car, I only know steering and, A, B, C, D, but he doesn't know anything beyond that one. And so what we find is many know how to describe everything in usul and qawaid and maqasid, but when you say how does it operate, unfortunately, that is often lacking. I don't need to be a good driver to know when you are a bad driver. I just need to know that you shouldn't cross the traffic lights. Yeah, the red light, don't cross it. Speed, don't go beyond 120 when we are in town. I don't need to know how to cook before I know you don't know how to cook either. Yes, I can taste the food, and the maqasid of good cooking has not been realized. I can take my child to the hospital, and he is not getting better. In fact, it seems he's getting worse. I'll go to another doctor. You don't tell me stick to this doctor but the whole thing is not realizing its maqasid. I'm not a doctor, I'm not going to do self-medication, but I will go and ask another opinion. Or maybe it's because you're a general practitioner. I would look for a specialist in the area. So our objective is to make the Muslim professionals more like a first aider, not a doctor, not even a nurse, first aid. And the reason is because over 80% of cases just require first aid. But it is important for the first aider to know if there's a serious problem, he knows where to go. As we already know, and we make it clear to professionals, there are two areas of Islamic teachings, two broad categories. Those areas that are the ma'alumin ad-din bid-darura, the fundamentals of the religion, everybody agrees, no problem. These are the black and white fundamentals, the usul of the deen. Then you've got the furu, the gray areas, which is based on dhanni evidence. The fundamentals are established by qat'i thubut qat'i dilala. Nobody argues about the source of the evidence. Nobody argues about the interpretation. And that's why we all go to Hajj, whether you are Maliki, Shafi, Hanafi, Hanbali, no problem. We accept the fundamentals. Ijtihad is where there's the gray area, where there's the agreement to disagree agreeably, and why we should not let the teachings of unity and wa'tasimu bihablillahi jami'an that come from the Quran and Sunnah to be destroyed because of gray areas of ijtihad. Al-yaqin la yazulu bishak. Certainty should not be overruled or kicked away because of our own personal opinions on things. There's a book, I'm sure most of you have come across it somewhere, called Where There Is No Doctor. This book is famous for its practical community level guidance on health, especially in low resource rural or emergency settings. The book empowers non-experts to take informed action when professional help is unavailable. You're in a village, no doctor. What do you do when there's an accident? What are the things that at least, alhamdulillah, you didn't just say, look, I don't know anything. So basic first aid. So what we are looking at is something similar. That's what Sharia intelligence is trying to do, where there is no mufti. Yeah. Empowering professionals who are in various areas to be able to do something without waiting for outside help or when it's not available. And when we talk about this subject, it is an introduction to usul, qawaid and maqasid, but also for the recognition of the fiqh al-waqi and the role of the professional, the expert who knows the context. You do not do ijtihad on Islamic finance without knowing finance. You don't do ijtihad because you know usul, qawaid and maqasid on medical issues and you do not have a doctor in that discussion. So every field requires those who have studied the reality of the area. This I will not spend time on. We already know the evolution of usul, but the reason why we teach this is so that people don't look at ijtihad as an usulul fiqh, some bid'ah, something. Because remember, some people have never heard about it before. Yeah. So how did we come about usul? Did the Prophet say something about it? Did Sahaba say anything about qiyas and maslaha and all of this? Where did it come from? So we go in how decisions were made at the time of the Prophet. Of course, you just ask the Prophet ﷺ. Sahaba were there. After their own period, the Jil al-Jama'i, those who gathered all this information, the Tabi'in mainly, the students of the Sahaba, and those who became the jurists, the analysts of all this information, with Imam Shafi writing the first recipe for usul. We use the metaphor of the first recipe for biryani. Okay. Biryani existed before somebody wrote a recipe. Okay. Ijtihad and usul was already in practice, but what Shafi did was write the recipe so anybody else knows and can see, and it encouraged others to write their own recipe. So this is what I mean by the metaphors we use to just help make it. You know, oh, he founded it. What does that mean? And you get a long debate about it. Of course, later this subject flourished, particularly in the Hanafi school with the Qawaid, and early Shafi school in Maqasid, later with Imam al-Shatibi, Ibn Ashur. But these were fields that supported the earlier subjects. So they were not looked upon as separate things, but the same mujtahid field that developed one improved with tools that helped in triangulation. For some people, we just follow Quran and Sunnah. What is the methodology? You know, so they will say we follow Quran and Sunnah bi minhaj as-salaf. What is that minhaj? What is that methodology? And so, if I may ask you here, what is 2 + 2 times 2 + 2? Okay? Just do the calculation in your head. This is what we do with the professionals. How many got 10?
8.
Anybody got 16?
8.
And somebody got 8. Okay? So the logic is if you do 2 + 2, 4, multiply by 2 + 2. Do we get the logic? Yeah, so somebody can do 2 + 2, 4, times 2 + 2, 4. So 4 times 4, 16. Another person does 2 + 2, 4, times 2, 8, plus 2, 10. Another logic. Another logic is 2 times 2 first, plus 2, 6, plus 2, 8. Okay, each one is logical, but which is right? Do we go with majority opinion? Do we go with the opinion of the oldest person around? So what we find is in mathematics, there's an order of operations that the ulama of maths have an ijma, that there's a qaida called BODMAS. I hope I'm not confusing anybody with my metaphors. Okay? Yeah, because the ulama of maths are ulama of the waqi of that subject area. So they say you do things in brackets, then anything to the order of, then you divide, then multiply, then add, and then subtract. So when you look here, we only have addition and multiplication. But M, multiplication comes before addition. So you multiply first, 2 times 2, 4. Then you add, plus 2, plus 2, and as the brother told us, the correct answer is 8. What your logic is doesn't matter, but that's not the logic of the ulama of maths. And the point we're making is methodology matters. If you use a wrong methodology, you will most likely get a wrong answer. If you get the right answer, it's only accidentally correct. Yes. We prefer, sometimes a fake doctor can give the right medicine. It doesn't mean it's okay. Right methodology gives us right answer. But it doesn't mean you will not make mistakes. But if you make mistakes, you are only accidentally wrong. So imagine maths without BODMAS. That's like imagining discussion and arguing fiqh without knowledge of usul. And the number of people who argue on fiqh who don't know usul, you can imagine their numbers. What is usul? We say usul is the BODMAS of Islamic jurisprudence. Yeah. It's the order of operations. It is the protocols, the order and methodology of using acceptable evidence in arriving at religious rulings. It's the scientific methodology that guides ijtihad in approximately representing the Prophet ﷺ in his absence. That's what the mujtahid is trying to do. As being among the warathatul anbiya, okay, what would the Prophet have done in this situation? Well, how would the Prophet have approached it? What is the difference between ijtihad and usul? We tell them ijtihad is the reasoning. It is what the jurist does. Usul is how and why it is done. It is the equations. Usul is the regulator of ijtihad. It's the methodology of using evidence, and it includes the field. So while we talk about usulul fiqh in its broadest sense, it also encompasses. For the sake of study, we can talk about usul and maqasid and qawaid separately. In reality, these fields operate together. And because ijtihad is dealing with dhanni evidence, whether it's dhanni thubut or dhanni dilala, some level of presumption in the source of the evidence or in its interpretation, these three critical subjects of the field of ijtihad are critical for triangulation. And why triangulation is important? For maximizing certainty and reducing error margin. Triangulation is looking for the fatwa or the hukum that is in the middle. It meets the requirements of the adillah of usul, it meets the qawaid, and it meets the maqasid of sharia. So we are not looking for an opinion that is only in usul but conflicts, and you have unnecessary ta'arud with the qawaid maqasid. You can't support it with anything. On the contrary, you find it's creating mafsada. But because you can defend it with usul doesn't mean it's okay. By triangulating, we are looking for, okay, of the three opinions, which one is the one that is supported by usul, qawaid, and maqasid? And the reason why this is important is because usul is like knowing how to drive a car. Okay? You know how to start the car, you know how to use the steering, you know how to put the brakes, to slow down, to accelerate. It's good, but that's not enough to guarantee a safe journey if you do not know the traffic rules. Yeah. I know how to drive a car, but I don't know the traffic rules, you may end up in an accident. If you arrive at the destination, it will be accidental. But it's not enough to say, I know how to drive a car and I know the traffic rules, but I don't know the destination. Or what's the use of your driving? Yeah. And so it's important for us to respect the traffic rules, but also, what is the color of the house? What is the color of the gate? Is there a tree in front? House number what? So that when we arrive, we can say, excellent, this is exactly where we want to end. A mother knows what a healthy baby or healthy child looks like. He is playful, likes to eat. You always have to say, keep quiet, sit down. That's when you know the child is healthy. And so that knowledge of the destination of ijtihad. So good driving is that central position where you know how to drive and you respect the traffic rules and you know the destination. So in positioning, and a tree serves various functions as a metaphor. You know, the Prophet ﷺ said the mu'min is like a tree, like a date palm, useful. I think trees are very useful metaphors, especially with their roots as usul. So sometimes we say usul is the rooting system and furu is the shooting system. You know, there's a shoot or the fruiting and the branching system and usul below. But here, just so that people know where things are, we say in the foundation you have the raw material and the ingredients that go into ijtihad. Everything should somehow be linked to the Quran and Sunnah, and the tools. So let's talk about medicine. You need some raw ingredients, minerals, plant extracts, active ingredients, but you need the industrial pharmacist. He's like the mujtahid. He knows how to produce the medicine for malaria. He knows how to produce the different medicines that are required. But because he's an industrial pharmacist, it doesn't mean he knows how to diagnose the patient. You need a separate qualification of a doctor, not a pharmacist. So you may get somebody who, I know all the opinions of the scholars I've finished reading Bidayat al-Mujtahid, I've memorized it. That's still like a chemist. It's like, I know all the medicine in the shop. You still need somebody who will diagnose and decide what medicine for this child. And that's why the mufti is important, the doctor is important, and why it's difficult to outsource a mufti. Yeah. It's easy to outsource the other ones. You can outsource a mufassir, a muhaddith, you can outsource these ones, but the final person, the doctor, wants to diagnose the patient because he wants to understand the context, your situation, your age, before prescribing. Because wrong diagnosis is wrong prescription. It's not, giving a fatwa is not out of context. There's these ahkam al-wad'iyah we will come to that are critical. To teach usul, we use the metaphor of, we tell a story of a man who lives in a small town. He is well respected. And some rich people, every time is time for Hajj, time for Qurban and Eid, what they do is they give him sheep. So sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 sheep. And because he knows who the poor people are, he handles the distribution. So in this particular year, he tells his family, I am going for Hajj with your mother. And he calls the family together and he gives them a wasiyah. When I am gone, if somebody brings a ram, you give the ram to the orphanage there. If somebody brings a second ram, you take it to the home of the elderly. If somebody brings a third ram, you give it to that madrasa which have some poor people. If they bring a second ram, you send it to the house of the lepers who need help. If more than number 4, use your head. But whatever you are going to decide, let it be a decision that represents me in my absence. Whatever you are going to decide, let it be a decision where when I come back from Hajj, I will be proud of it. The elder brother and the other brothers and sisters said, no problem. Inshallah, we will represent you well. So the father and mother go for Hajj, but they lose their phone. Okay. Can't get back in touch, but they've already told the family what to do in their absence. While away, as expected, 3-4 days before time for Eid, somebody brings a ram. Do they have a problem of what to do with the ram? Any problem? No, it's clear in the Nas. Are we together? Yeah, it's clear what to do. A second ram, any problem? No. But then somebody brought a cow. Any problem? There's a problem now. Okay, why? There's no clear nas for this one. And so they have to start their ijtihad. But they have to do ijtihad that represents their father in his absence. They have to do ijtihad, the kind where at the end of it, he will be proud of how they arrived at their decision. Problem is, while they were discussing, so they came, somebody came back inside the house and said, the cow that was just brought, it is sick. What do you mean it is sick? Well, when it was first brought, it was standing and everything, but in less than 30 minutes after bringing the cow, it looks sick. Its head is sideways. So what do we do about the sick cow? That's the big question. So there are some sensible solutions of what to do with the sick cow. Let me ask what would you suggest we do with the sick cow? Anybody?
Animal doctor.
Sorry?
Animal doctor.
Get a vet, an animal doctor.
Sell it off.
Sell it.
Slaughter.
Slaughter it. So, different solutions. Some said get medicate. They asked the vet what to do with the cow, and the vet said, we can medicate it. This animal is suffering from stress. It comes all the way from a long distance. And because these drivers want to go back and bring other cows, they don't rest on the way. And what usually happens with these animals is after about 2-3 days, they die. But some, with medication and care, may survive. 50-50 chance of survival. The problem is, if we medicate this animal, you will not be able to eat its meat for the next 2 weeks. So the family sit, what to do? And then everybody starts bringing their suggestions. We save the cow, we consult the vet, we consult the livestock sellers, let's consult farmers, different people that they are talking of consulting. We do sadaqah, give it to the poor and let them decide what to do with it. Consult family members and friends. Let's slaughter it and share the meat. Ask the donor who sent it, what should we do? The cow you brought is sick. Somebody says, but you know, dad has a very good friend. Let's consult his Sahaba. Let's consult the closest friend of our father. But somebody said, but this is not the first time. You know, 2 years ago, a ram got sick. Okay, a ram got sick. We can do what was done before. This case is similar. This is a person doing his qiyas with a case of the past of what to do with the ram. Another says, you know, let's discuss and we arrive at an ijma. We arrive at a consensus. What we all agree on. Somebody says, like Nigerian thinking, very entrepreneurial, we'll sell it and we buy another one. No, we send it back to the donor, one young person said. Somebody said we consider the greatest benefit to the greatest beneficiaries. There was a maqasid behind why somebody gave us this animal. Let's make sure we fulfill that maqasid. And the ideas come on and go. Sorry?
There was a group that said the community being poor may not really mind the sick, just they'll deal with it, they fit in more.
Exactly. That the community, they are poor. You give them sick cow, healthy cow, they will eat it anyway. You know, just keep an eye on the cow, make sure it doesn't die. So these are all sensible solutions, but you will find two types of suggestions here. One suggestion is already deciding what to do, save the cow. Another suggestion is saying, let us not decide, let us let others decide. This one is saying we decide. This one is saying let others decide. We decide, let somebody else decide. Let somebody else decide. Let the case of the past decide. Let a consensus decide. This one is saying let us decide. So here we find, for some, they are asking a question. What is the best source of the solution before we look at solution? What is the source of the best solution before we consider the solution? What is a credible source of guidance before we look at the advice? Who's the expert before we go for expert opinion? What do we agree is the equation or board mass before we start the calculation? In research, we look at research methodology methods before we look at your results. If we got a problem here, then we don't even have to look there. It will just be accidentally correct. We look at the usul before we look at the fiqh and the fatwa. So if we look at this, yes, there are some common sense, reasonable solutions for the sick cow, but there's looking at more reliable sources too. You know, there's nothing more reliable than the wasiyah that was left behind. And to look at the opinion of the highest authority. Get in touch with our dad or our mum if possible. Look at the wasiyah. If that is not available, then we start looking at secondary sources. But even in the secondary sources, we start with better minds. Yeah. Let's see if a consensus would be better before I start my ijtihad. Let's see whether we can do something that is the opinion of a more reliable source of information before we start cracking our heads. In other words, we look for better minds, fasalu ahla dhikr, so to speak, before you start your ijtihad. So when we look at the opinions of the sick cow, the family, one says, let us get a consensus of all family members and friends. That would be a very powerful decision. It's very difficult for us to do this, arrive at a conclusion, and our father to say, you did a big mistake. Yeah. Or we do analogy with what our father did before. This would be called qiyas. Or we look at the opinion of somebody close to our father, his best friend. Or we look at the opinion of grandpa or our auntie. It's going to be difficult for our father to say, you are very stupid. When we asked your best friend, like he has been with you longer than us, he's a better mind to consult. or local consensus of those around, or the legal presumption, the fact that you said, we get creative. Al-Asl was Ibaha, there's an istishab there. Or maybe somewhere in the history of the family, great-grandfather faced this problem. We look at what would be a Shar'u man qablana, what would be an earlier position within the family. It's not a bid'ah since it's within reliable sources. But is this the first time a cow is getting sick? No. Every year cows are getting sick before time for Eid. So what is the norm? What's the urf? What's the ada? Why do we need to get creative if there's been an existing solution that has done a maslaha good job? And that's why everybody is still following the urf, because it is problem solving. And so we'll just ask people at the market who sell cattle, who ox cow, what do you normally do? And they may say, oh, there's somebody here, that's his job. If you have a sick cow, he is ready to medicate, and he will look at it and decide, and he will give you money or give you another cow, and you can go and buy sheep, goats, you can decide what to do. Others would start their personal assessment. In other words, because the cow is very sick, somebody says we have no time to get everybody to an agreement. We have no time to start. The cow is different from the goat of last year. Yeah, the goat was small. This one is enough to feed all of these places. We need to start our thinking. We can't just rely on others. The getting anything to do with consensus, earlier family, if these ones are not available, the person starts thinking, all right, what is the objective of the cow? Why was it given in the first place? But somebody is also interested in preclusion, that whatever you are going to do with the sick cow, the cow must not die. Yes, that meat must not be wasted. This is a Sadduzaria type of thinking. Or at the end of the day, after listening to everything, what's the wisest opinion? This one would be called what? Yes, istihsan. Juristic preference. Because at the end of the day, after you've listened to the qiyas, you've listened to the ra'i, you've listened to whatever, which one realizes the maqasid? Because you know why the cow was given. So to make it easy for participants to remember, we tell them QS, Ikra, I miss you. Okay? Ikra, I miss you. QS, Quran, Sunnah. Okay? So these are the usul and the adilla of fiqh. Why Quran? We all know. Why Sunnah is a priority? We all know. But Ikra, I miss you, is a summary of the adilla. IQRA, I miss you. Ijma, Qiyas, Ra'i Sahabi, Amal Ahl al-Madina, Istishab, Maslaha, Istihsan, Sadduzaria, Sharu man qablana, and Urf. And we go through, you'll forgive me for, this is not new to you guys, so we don't need to go through, but we will have to explain what are each of these and examples. Basically, for those who are interested, these are the adilla. And on the road of Ijtihad, when you say you are using evidence, you mean Quran or Sunnah and the various tools. So this is what is evidence. If you don't have this, you don't have evidence. You can support these with other tools. And what we have is schools who are managing dhanni evidence. Ikra, I miss you is dhanni generally. These are areas that madhabs differ. A madhab is a dhanni management team. Okay, it's a team of scholars that want to manage, and they've got different tools they use. So it's a school, a group with unique, nuanced dhanni management methodology. They differ in their ranking of the QS, Ikra, I miss you. So we'll give examples of the Malikis and how they use Amal and Ahad, how some use urf, others prefer istishab, istihsan versus maslaha, and some of the debates that are there. But the critical equation, what a madhab looks like. A madhab is a school with an equation where they accept certain tools but not others. So we look at the major tools of the madhabs, and of course we have to acknowledge there are some sub-schools. You can find sub-schools within the Hanafi, depending on the urf and various scholars and how they changed. Biryani is different. It's still biryani, but the biryani in one place is different from the other. The laksa, what is it? Laksa, right? Yeah, of Sarawak, very different. Key ingredients, enough to call it laksa, but then you have some of these nuances. You can all agree we make tea, but when you make tea, different. But there are certain things you will still have as ingredients. So this is just to help the professionals understand what is a madhab. A madhab is a school with a methodology. And in the Hanafi madhab, they would put Quran and Sunnah mutawatir as priority, followed by istihsan, qiyas, ijma, ra'ayi, Sunnah ahad, ra'ayi, urf, istishab, etc., etc. And the Maliki will put Amal Ahl al-Madina as next, followed by. The Shafi, the Hanbali, the Zahiri. But the key thing we want to show is they all agree on the fundamentals that are the sources of the ma'alum min ad-din bid-darura. So they agree on the critical ingredients, they differ in some of the spices that they use for it. Reason and revelation, according to Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, is similar to the relationship between the eyes and light. He describes reasoning as the receptacle. Then the Quran is لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لِقَوْمِ يَعْقِلُونَ. The ayat are for people who would think and ponder and do tadabbur. Reasoning is like the receptacle of revelation. But he says, reason is like the eyes, revelation is like light. To say you are going to use your reasoning without revelation is like saying you are going to move around with your eyes open in the dark. To say you are going to use wahy and revelation but not your reasoning is like moving around in daylight but you are blind or your eyes are closed. Both reason and revelations are tools for guidance. And so when it comes, you find the ayat in revelation help us in clarifying the ayat in creation. But the ayat of creation, when Allah talks about ayat, lessons, fil afaq wa fi anfusikum, these are areas that we go and study, and it helps us understand things in the Quran better. And so the professionals who study economy, who study astronomy, who study biology, they come back and understand the Quran with greater nuance. They do the siru fil ard. فَانْظُرْ كَيْفَ عَقِبَةِ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. And studying history, they come back and they have new discussions about archaeology, history, etc. Iramazat al-Imad, what is Iram? Where Iram? And it's somebody who went and studied that subject that comes and explains, but the other way around too. But the reason is important is because there are some reason-based tools, the istidlal tools. They play safety net role. Where do we see safety nets? Sorry? In playground for children, not to hurt themselves. When you see in the Olympics there are gymnastics, okay, they will have a safety net. In some construction sites, just so that workers don't fall. There's always something there to protect the spirit of Sharia, the Maqasid of Sharia, from the intellectual gymnastics of Ijtihad. And these are usually in usul, they are the maslaha, istihsan, saddu zariya that form these. But because of the dhanni level, the reasoning based, these are supported by the qawaid and the maqasid. In other words, it reduces the amount of speculation. And so when we now have a very sick cow where you need to make quick decision, and this is what we are finding in VUCA environment, volatile, uncertain, complicated, ambiguous societies that professionals face, they need to decide on this surgery, to abort the child or not to abort the child. No time to go and consult. The professional is required also to get his first aid kits and survival of the fittest for today's professionals. And so maslaha, saddu zariya and istihsan are becoming more important tools. But because of the dhanni part of this, it is important to have greater certainty and to maximize this certainty by using maxims, the qawaid and the maqasid. So the importance of protecting the spirit of the law and triangulation with other sources to maximize certainty. That instead of low certainty, you try to go higher with what we've already discussed. So what are, and so we introduce the qawaid. What are the qawaid? These legal maxims are shorthand, they are the proverbs of the Quran and Sunnah. They are the hikam of the Quran and Sunnah. The aphorisms, the principles, the profound constructs. In every tradition, we have like a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. This is like saying al-yaqin la yazulu bishak. That certainty matters, that you measure twice, cut once. So it is wisdom from various sources, but all in one sentence. You know, somebody will say, make hay while the sun is shining. This is a farmer talking. Strike while the iron is hot is saying the same thing, but this is a blacksmith. A stitch in time saves 9. Who is talking? A tailor. The early bird catches the worm. It's probably an environmentalist. You know. So when we look at the hadith, take the benefit of 5 before 5. Your free time before your preoccupation. Okay? Effectively, what we find about the qawaid is they are principles that go through every field. Yeah, they're not just in one field. This statement, use your free time now, you know, don't delay to tomorrow what you can do today, applies in many fields. So this we find a useful metaphor for teaching the qawaid, but more importantly, it's like the universal laws of physics, like gravity. What's the name of the person? This is a trick question. What's the name of the person who invented gravity?
No, Al-Hamadani.
I said it was a trick question. Did he invent gravity?
No, he's not discovered.
Exactly. In other words, it was discovered. Okay? It has always been there. Yeah, Allah created gravity. But somebody discovers it. And then describes it, articulates it, named it. Not innovated or created. So what they find with the qawaid, these are the universal laws, just like of physics. These are like the laws of gravity and electromagnetism that are in the Quran. So they are not invented, they are discovered. And so scholars write about them. So the major universal ones are like Islamic law summarized in 5 sentences. So I remember once an interfaith Christian group asked me, present the spirit of Islam. And I just did qawaid. They are similar to mutawatir hadith. Why? Because they are established directly from numerous verses of the Quran and numerous hadith. So they are very powerful. When you say al-umur bi maqasidiha, it's not just innamal a'mal bin niyat, it's also innamal a'mal bil hawatim. It's not just a hadith. It is all the verses of the Quran to do with niyyah and ihsan and fi sabilillah and consequences. So those universal 5 umur bi maqasidiha, matters are judged by their purposes. Al-yaqin la yazulu bi shak, ad-darar yuzal, al-mashakka tajlibu at-taysir, and al-ada muhakkama. These are the maxims. But what do they mean? We represent them. Al-umur bi maqasidiha is saying purpose matters. Both the purpose, consider the intent and the motive, but also the consequence. Why do you want to do it? But what is also the result? The hawatim. We also are concerned with yaqeen and certainty and evidence, data, proof, maximizing certainty, reducing doubt, bias. We want to be more empirical. The istishab of al-asl is this, and al-asl bara'atu dhimma, which we will come to later. Ad-darar yuzal is about removing and preventing hardship or reducing it to the best of our ability, suffering. But this is, of course, an area of impact assessment. Depending on which type of darar you are removing, who is the expert in measuring? Is it a health impact, an economic impact assessment, a social impact assessment? You would need the ulama of that field to help in that. But also, al-mashaqqa tajlibu at-taysir, instead of focusing on the problem, is focusing on the victim. So it is more victim-centric, of taysir, of showing compassion, making things easy, having rukhsa, concessions, etc. And al-ada muhakkama is about respecting good custom, respecting diversity and contexts. So we use examples for each, and then we come to Maqasid. The goals, the objectives. Basically, for Muslim professionals, the Maqasid form the Qibla compass of the Muslim professional. Where should your field, what should your field be doing? What's the objective of medicine? What's the objective of architecture? Why do you study it? Which fardu kifaya are you trying to be involved in? Which darura are you trying to remove? Which haja are you trying to remove? Or what are you trying to achieve? Is it the daruriyat or the hajiyat or tahsiniyat as applied to which field? So we just let them know there are two parts. There's the jalbul masalih, a maslaha part, and the dar'ul mafasid, a negative removal part. So there's an amal bil ma'ruf part, there's an nahy anil munkar aspect of each of the maqasid. But it's the qibla compass for the professional. And the more you know of the details of the destination, the more you are able to fulfill that purpose. So when we look at hifdhun nafs and preservation of life, and I'll not go into the details of all, but this is medicine, this is military and security. They are interested in protecting life. Food security and agriculture is about protecting life. Waste management and disposal is about health and protecting life. People in nutrition, people in deen, if we narrow down, and understanding the deen and tafsir and da'wah and aql and education and mental health and psychiatry and dignity and human rights and preventing all sorts of insulting people and asabiya and all those things that may be negatively used. We use family here to put together, like what Ibn Ashur did of nasal and nasab, put them all, they're all family related, and children and elderly and all of that, and wealth, economics. Here you have lawyers in areas of family law and judges, all trying to protect family. Wealth, business, entrepreneurs, accountants, the whole issue around zakat and the halal industry, environmental support. You know, when the people of Nuh would not follow guidance, Allah was still interested in protecting biodiversity. If the day of judgment finds you trying to plant a tree, finish planting it. And protection of tree and life support and wisdom and truth and the siru fil ard. You may call it tourism, but that's part of the ta'arafu. That's where you get to learn more about others, and justice and fairness and mercy. And so there are other of these maqasid, and subhanallah, feel embarrassed talking about this in the presence of anyway, I'm saying what we do, right? And various ways, you know, sustainable development goals of measuring progress, human development index, a Maqasid index, and different indices are stronger and weaker at measuring different things. So some societies may find this is useful in measuring our adab. You may find a society that is very high on the human development index, but they are the biggest destroyers of environment in another society. Or they are killing innocent people in another society. When you look at their index, you say, well, good society, yeah, but look at what they are doing to others too. So one tool may not be enough. Human flourishing index is one that measures the level of satisfaction with life, the sense of contentment. And it's interesting, and you can look at the Harvard University who did the human flourishing index and they measured 20 countries with the highest population, and number one was Indonesia. Very interesting study of that. But we also talk about the interdependence. You know, if you threaten wealth, you threaten education. You threaten livelihood and medical care. If you threaten life, you threaten everything. If you remove somebody's clothes and threaten his dignity, he can't go to work. Yeah. So the need to recognize these as interdependent, so it's difficult to remove one. But why this is important for professionals is for them to know, where's your profession? You are an architect. An architect is concerned also with environment and energy saving and affordable housing. So there's a part to do with environment. You can look at wealth as natural resources also, not just, so each of these are viewed as domains in life. So other ways, there are many other ways. So some would actually put dignity as a separate group. Some would say dignity is central. Others will put religion as central. Okay, but these are all classifications for various purposes, for the sake of teaching, and the key thing is the interdependence. Now, what is all of this usul, qawaid and maqasid for? At the end of the day, they want to categorize. There's a ahkam al-taklifiyah that is intended. And so scholars classify things into fard, the kifaya, and ayn, and mustahab, and mubah, makruh, and haram. So at the end of the day, the person wants to know, is this fard or wajib? Is it haram or makruh? Which category is it? Can I go ahead or not go ahead? However, as we know, there's more than 5. The Hanafis separate fard and wajib, and they have makruh, tahrimi, and tanzihi. But because this is a basic class, just to let people know that exists. But to remember, all of this is what falls under the general halal. Halal means no sin. However, rulings have a context. If I ask the question, what is the boiling point of water?
It depends, yeah.
Very good. Do prices increase with demand? Ceteris paribus? Not necessarily. Very good. So in science, they put STP. They say water boils at 100 degrees centigrade under standard temperature and pressure. All things being equal. Do prices increase with demand? All things being equal. Yes. Under normal circumstances. So it's important to remember, any text without context becomes pretext. Okay? Text without context is pretext. It's deceptive. Is Maghrib Salat compulsory? Any terms and conditions? Yes. Is she pregnant? Oh, sorry, is she in her periods? Is it a child? Maghrib prayer is not compulsory if the time for Maghrib, the sabab, the shurut, the mani, all of these factors. Is Hajj compulsory? Yes, but, right? It depends. Is alcohol haram?
Yes.
Yes. Under standard temperature and pressure. Terms and conditions apply. That you are not in darura. Is marriage encouraged?
Yes.
Yes. Under standard temperature and pressure. Yeah.
You have the money.
If you have the money. Yes. If you don't have HIV/AIDS or something. If. So that's terms and conditions. So this is the subject of ahkam al-wad'iyah, and the reason why we put that is these are the factors, the legal terms and conditions for the taklifiyah. They are the preventers, the mani, the hindrances. This shows you when does it apply, who does it apply to, how does it apply, where does it apply. That rulings have contexts, and if you do not know that, keep quiet. Because somebody comes to you with his haja situation or darura situation and you just do copy paste. Why? Because it's not your field. So the need also to recognize that these ones come from the text for the rulings. It's the same Quran that says Maghrib, Quran and Sunnah that says Maghrib is fard, that says the woman in menstruation should not pray. It's the same Quran that says Hajj is compulsory, but for who? Man istata'a ilayhi sabila. The same Quran that says you should do it also puts conditions. The same Quran that says, fajtanibuhu, and avoid alcohol, is the same one that is saying don't eat pork. The same one that is saying فَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. That whoever is driven, it's the same Quran that put this ruling that also put the conditions. So don't take the ruling forgetting it has its conditions and terms and conditions. Why? Because it is these conditions that give the appropriate context for the applied laws. Otherwise, text without context is pretext. The greater the hardship somebody is facing, the greater the movement of the problem from a tahsini situation to a haja to a darura, the greater what is the rukhs and the concessions. So yes, there's these classifications, but important to remember, all rulings come with their terms and conditions. When these conditions change, so do the rulings. No denial, taghayyur al-fatwa, bitaghayyur al-ahwal and azman and all of that. When these are not considered, these terms and conditions, Sharia is misrepresented. And so to make it clear that if you have not studied this subject area, careful about wanting to go into fatwa making. Look for the expert. Each ruling is sensitive to context. The scholars will say there is no denying. This is one of the few maxims that starts with la yunkar, no denying. But there's a change in context. Change in the rulings follow changes in context. And that is when a hukum of something that is haram usually becomes a fatwa that allows the exception. Sometimes these words are used interchangeably. And the danger is we betray Sharia's inbuilt rahmah, an adaptive system, in the name of we want to be strict, we want to defend and protect and respect Sharia, without recognizing but Sharia has its own protocols of when the hukum will change to a different hukum because somebody's situation is different. So the need to always be aware of the dua of the mazloom. Yes, you don't just copy paste and you forget whether he is suffering or not suffering. So how the jurists think. This is where we start presenting and we come towards the ending of this. How the jurists think, the logical process of ijtihad. So we say it is similar to a case in court, since most people know court cases. When you go to court, and the court is somebody stole your phone, okay? And we say, wa yazu billah, you are saying brother Busari stole your phone. How is that judgment going to start? It's similar to an issue on trial. The first thing that the judge starts with is he starts with the default ruling. So even though you accuse him, the judge starts his process by assuming that bara'atu dhimma, he is free of responsibility. And he is innocent until you can prove guilt. Not the other way around. If he starts the other way around, he has already started with a biased judgment. You have a problem with him. The moment the judge says, okay, Busari, prove your innocence, then you know there's a problem with the judge. Yeah, he doesn't like you. Because how are you going to prove you are innocent? But it's mine, where's the receipt? Here's the receipt. We'll take you to prison if you can't bring a receipt. What? Why not ask him to bring evidence that I stole the phone? No, we're starting with you first. What kind of judgment is that? So, yeah. So you can imagine the opposite is have when you invert the default ruling. If we say no, you are guilty until proven innocent, we enter trouble. So we start with the default, and then the judge looks for searching for evidence to prove guilt, not to prove innocence. Innocence is the default. So search for evidence to prove guilt, and we agree, if the judge is fully convinced beyond the shadow of doubt, then he's comfortable with his answer. If it's not beyond the shadow of doubt, maybe it's beyond reasonable doubt. That's a bit weaker. Or based on preponderance, the rajih of the evidence, that's still weaker. So it determines how much confident the judge is based on the quality of the evidence. And this is why in the case of an issue on trial, where for the mujtahid, he wants to look at the evidence. Do we have evidence in usul, qawaid or maqasid to prove that you are guilty or that it is haram? Whatever, at the end he will conclude on the wisest decision. And in judgment, Imam Malik said 90% of judgment cases are istihsan based. At the end of the day, after listening to everything, what's the wisest thing to do? If there is no evidence, then it return to default ruling. If you cannot prove he is guilty, then he remains innocent until proven guilty. So if you cannot prove, so if al-asl is ibaha, then you bring evidence that it is haram. If you can't, it goes back to the asl, ibaha. So what we say is that every domain and aspect of life, in every domain, Sharia has a default ruling and a starting point called the istishab. This is where the starting point is for the mufti or the mujtahid. And to make it easy to remember some of these, we have flipped plus H, different type of spelling, right? So the first is freedom from obligations, bara'atu dhimma, that this is the default, that people are free from obligations unless proven otherwise by Quran, Sunnah or Iqra, I miss you. That life is sacred. Al-asl fi dima al-haram. Life is sacred. You can't take a life without a good reason. You have to prove the other way around. That literal meaning in language is what is assumed, unless you can prove it is metaphorical. That innocence is assumed unless you can prove guilt. So these are the defaults. The things are pure, tahir, by default, unless you can prove najas. That al-asl is ibaha, especially in customs, dunya issues, transactions, mu'amalat, unless proven otherwise. That equality is assumed in justice, unless proven that some kind of inequality will serve equity or serve justice better. The duty when you have contracts is assumed unless you can prove otherwise. That in ibadat is tawaqquf unless you can prove otherwise. Of course, there's a more bigger argument here, but that generally solves the problem. And that al-asl fil haram, fil madar is haram. That if it is harmful, it is haram by default, unless you can prove otherwise. In other words, these are the default starting points. And we start with istishab, we end with istihsan. Why? Because of our biases. There's the danger from having a xenophobic reactionary jurisprudence. That just because we don't like your culture, we say your culture is haram. By default, instead of it is innocent until proven guilty. So very many cognitive biases we have against the others. Maybe because it's non-Muslim. Prophet had no problem with the Khandak technology of military strategy from Faris. Why? Al-Asl was ibaha. It's their own urf, but it solved the problem. He had no problem with Yemeni dressing. He had no problem with, a lot of the Jahiliyyah systems of business, of musharaka, mudaraba, a lot of these areas, Asl was ibaha. But sometimes we have developed, for historical or various reasons, an opposition. That the moment it is your own urf, we take it is haram. And then we invert and twist the istishab. So the reason why istishab of something is important to know is it helps us avoid saying something is haram because it's new, because it's Western, because it's native, because it's cultural, because it's strange, because it's foreign. And instead of going to Islam from its own sources, we look at what are they doing, what do they want, we say the opposite is what is Islamic. So we invert the istishab. And the problem with inverting istishab is you do istihlal. You've made the haram to be halal. Or you've done istihram. What is halal by default, now you've made it haram. It's like the judge who twisted that you are guilty until proven innocent. The rest of the process is flawed because you started with wrong beginning. And this has led to a lot of istihram, a lot of extremism, a lot of takfir, especially when people look at urf. And they don't take it that al-ada muhakkama. And they don't appreciate maslaha. When Sayyidina Ali, what was the main reason for killing Sayyidina Ali by the Khawarij? He used maslaha. If Khawarij existed during the time of Umar, when he suspended the amputation, they would most likely have said he has also done, man la yahkum bima anzalallah. So as we said before, it's to get that center. And these are just different diagrams that summarize the process of triangulation. You establish the istishab first, and because we're dealing with professionals, you have to say it in different ways just to reinforce. It's to establish the istishab. So in most professions, everything halal except what is haram, to see if you can have an exception from the ikra, I miss you, qawaid, maqasid, any professional input. If you can't, or if you find any evidence, you pick the wisest, or istishab, go back to the default. Another way of putting it, starting with istishab, the machinery of evidence. If no evidence, then it goes back to default. If there's evidence, which is the strongest? Eating carnivorous animals. Can you eat a lion? It's mu'amalat. So everything is halal except what is haram. Haram requires evidence with a degree of certainty. So we look at the Quran. If it is haram in the Quran, no problem. Everybody agrees it is haram. But because it's not in the Quran, we look, is it in hadith mutawatir? Because everybody accepts that one. If it's in hadith mutawatir, no problem. Because it will be part of ma'alum min ad-din bid-darura, nobody argues about these two, if it's explicitly clear. If it is not, you are moving now into dhanni sources. We tell everybody, calm down. Because you are now going to say, okay, let's look at ahad hadith. Or let's look at other tools of ijtihad, the ikra, I miss you, and maqasid, and all of that. If, however, it is found that there's a hadith which says you do not eat carnivorous animals or birds with talons, but because it's an ahad hadith, the Shafi and the Hanbali consider it's enough evidence for haram. The Hanafis take it is only enough for makruh tahrimi. The Malikis insist it has to be supported by amal, Ahl al-Madina. And because it is not supported, they look at it as makruh. Some look at it as shaz. But the point being that the moment you cross this line, you are now into the territory of dhanni and ijtihad and madhabs. And the need to calm down, the adab of ikhtilaf, don't destroy our unity. That this process of ijtihad is in this territory. This is a clearer diagram. We had another one, this one, but I think is more difficult to, this is cleaner. So this is a cleaner diagram, but I think difficult to see, right? So we'll go to my dirty one. I put it there just, since clarifying is better. But basically you start with a question that you want to know, is it fard, mustahab, mubah, makruh? Which one is it? Under STP, standard temperature and pressure, not in darura. If it is, let's know that from the beginning. What is the situation? So the question has to be very specific. So let's say the question is, can you eat kangaroo? Or mangosteen? Or, something that, okay, it's mu'amalat. Al-asl is ibaha, because that is the istishab, that's the default ruling for something like mangosteen or kangaroo. Any evidence in usul, so you look at Quran, Sunnah. If there's no evidence to make it haram, we look at all the other evidence. So ijma, qiyas, the ikra, I miss you. As we are doing this, we support the safety nets of usul, maslaha, saddu zariya, and istihsan with the qawaid and the maqasid. Al-umur bi maqasidiha, does eating kangaroo or this one create any problem? Does it undermine any of the maqasid of Sharia? No. Does it cause harm? Ad-darar yuzal? No. Is there a victim? Mashakka tatribu taysir? No. Is it contrary to the custom of people in Australia or wherever? No. So we have no evidence for haram. We look at whether it threatens religion, threatens life, mind, dignity, compassion, environment, any of the others. The answer is no. Then the wisest opinion is it goes back to istihsan. Al-asl is ibaha. If, however, the question was, durian. You may find that al-asl is ibaha also. And you carry on, everything is fine with durian, and it goes back to mubah. The problem, however, is in the specific question you ask, can you eat durian and go and lead prayers? And that's probably when you say, okay, now we've got a very specific question that has given us a context. And you look into the ikra, I miss you, and you find in qiyas, maybe you want to say it's similar to garlic or raw onions. But even if somebody wants to argue, no problem. We'll come to adarar yuzal. Does it cause harm, an inconvenience? Does it create any problem? Is there a person who will face mashakka because of your durian breath? May apply to dirty socks too. Does it affect life and dignity? Are you showing any rahmah to people when you go into the mosque with your durian? So based on that, what is the wisest decision? We may tell you it is makruh, don't go. If, however, kangaroo was fine, but it's endangered species of kangaroo. Endangered species of kangaroo. So the kangaroos are getting extinct. Then we will look at the same thing, and even though we may say, well, during the time of Nuh alayhi salam, there was environmental problem and there was a need to save. We could, come up with that type of a qiyas. But it's when you start looking at umur bi maqasidiha, what is the consequence of this extension for us as khulafa fil ard? We look at the harm you create to the environment by extinction. We look at the maqasid. In other words, when it's clear you are causing harm, when we have certainty from the professionals in the area, when we look at what maqasid to natural environment or wealth, it becomes easier for us to have a policy on prohibiting the extinction of kangaroos. So this is really just to put in a process. This one is a bit neater, but again, the triangulation in Ijtihad of the row, you start with the beginning, you move down through the tools, consider the maqasid, the qawaid, and you end either with the judgment or you go back to the istihsan. So to just give a few examples of application, we come to an end. Can you address a Christian as a kafir? Okay. Can you call this kafir, come sit down here, we want to have an interfaith dialogue. And somebody insists that, well, the Quran says, Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun and whatever. Of course, that's a simplistic interpretation because you look at the sabab al-nuzul of that ayah to find out what is the... Somebody argues, yeah, but it says, وَلَا تُجَادِلُ أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, and this is not in line with ahsan. So whether you like it or not, he's a kafir. But he doesn't like it, he feels insulted. Whether he likes it or not, Allah says he's a kafir, he's a kafir. Okay? So, sometimes you get stuck with arguing. When, however, you look at the same question from the point of view of umur bi maqasidiha, the Quran, you could use kitabi, you could use masihi or nasara, you could use kafir, you can use mushrik, you can use kitabi, you can use Christian. So you've got options. Why are you picking kafir? Yeah, what is your niyyah? When you know it hurts him. Then al-umur bi maqasidiha, and innamal a'mal bin niyyat. If you're trying to insult, you can't cover insulting with religious clothing, and we say no problem. But also, what's the consequence? Is it causing harm? We say ad-darar yuzal, harm must be eliminated. Part of the umur bi maqasidiha, matters of interest in Islam, is sulh. Is this promoting sulh? Is it promoting social cohesion? So when we look at it in our own al-ada, what do we understand when we call him a kafir? Because the other one called him a Christian, and you call him a kafir, and you insist. In our own urf, you are insulting, you just want trouble. When we look at the same thing from the angle of maqasid, if the deen and the positive promotion of deen is dawah, are you promoting dawah by calling him a kafir? Are you promoting sulhu? If laqad karramna bani Adam, are you honoring him? And so by triangulating, it tells us if there are different words we could use. Qawaid and maqasid help us identify what is more appropriate for the context. We look at another example. Scholars differ on the punishment for rape. And they do qiyas. Some say rape is like zina, and for that reason we need 4 witnesses. Others say rape, like Ibn Hazm and co, say rape is like hiraba, so a different type of qiyas. And iktisab, and like it's like robbing. Because they say it's like robbery, they are not saying you need 4 witnesses. They treat it like the evidence for hiraba. Circumstantial evidence is accepted. Whereas in rape, once you say it is like zina, then you are tied by the laws of evidence for zina. Others, Ibn al-Qasim in the Maliki school, you find some who are saying they treat it as ta'zir. In other words, they don't put it the same. They leave it to the judge. You decide what should be the punishment. And in Maliki, it can be death sentence, it can be any sentence that the judge feels. And what evidence is required for ta'zir? It can be DNA, anything that can convince the judge. So you've got a debate if you stick with just the usul and these ones have their views, or this is majority, minority. When you look at the evidence from the qawaid point of view, if you look at the law of evidence, what is the purpose of looking for evidence in rape? Because in the case of zina, you want to do hifdhul ird. That's why new conditions, you have to bring all this, etc. In the case of zina, we don't want to catch the person. We found in the case of the Ghamidiyya lady, in so many cases, the Prophet and Sahaba tried to avoid. Why? Because there wasn't a clear perpetrator and victim. Whereas in all the other laws in Sharia, where there's a clear perpetrator and victim, Sharia is interested in catching the perpetrator, interested in standing with the victim against the perpetrator. So if rape is a case we are interested in catching, if you insist that you will go with the qiyas of zina for rape, then you create problems in the question of certainty. You do not remove the harm. Why? Because most people who will do rape will not do rape where 4 people can see. Even ordinary zina, you can't catch people. How easy is it to catch with 4 witnesses? Then somebody who wants to rape. So by looking at the law of evidence, the law of zina has its own maqasid of hifdhul ird. Whereas all the other laws where you are looking for the perpetrator, it's because you want justice. And so by looking at the same issue from the qawaid maqasid, it helps us lean probably better towards a judgment on the punishment and the evidence that would help the rape victim, al-mashaqqa tajribu taysir. Otherwise, every time you have it, if the rape victim says, I was raped, and they say, by who? By this person, do you have 4 witnesses? That's because you are using a zina qiyas on it. And if you say, no, I don't have witnesses, I'm the only one, or my friend saw me. No, witness requires 4. And if you don't have 4, it's qazaf, and now you're in trouble. Yeah, because of our own qiyas. So by triangulating, it allows us to do the istihsan. Should we go with this qiyas or should we go with maslaha or something else that is supported by the qawaid and maqasid? The big debate of Ibn Taymiyyah of triple divorce at one instance. And we find the differences on usul. Some look at, based on the hadith of Ibn Abbas, that the sunnah as the Prophet left it, and during the time of Abu Bakr and the early time of Umar, 3 divorces on one occasion was equivalent to 1. But as a Saddu Zariya or Ra'i Sahabi, Umar tried to control the abuse of divorce by making 3 equal to 3. But some look, no, what Umar did is what is best. So you find most of the madhabs take it that 3 is equal to 3. But they generally agree, yes, Ijtihad of Umar was behind it. The question is that Ijtihad still relevant today, where we've got now high divorce rates and we've got a lot of children who are not being taken care of by their parents? Why? Just because the father lost his head and gave 3 at one occasion. So again, we look at the purposes, umur bi maqasidiha. Is the ruling still achieving the maqasid of hifdhul ird or the family or the nasab or nasal in the current context? Darar yuzal, does it remove the harm? Is it solving the problem, or is it creating a problem greater than it is trying to solve? In other words, can professionals today do studies to let us know whether this achieves the maqasid of family better than the other ruling, which, in other words, again, triangulation. A woman embraces Islam without her husband. What should happen? In Ahkam al-Ahd al-Dhimma, Ibn Qayyim says there are 9 different opinions given by the scholars. Some say fast, like instant, break, the Zahiri school. The Hanafis will say you ask the husband. If the husband says I'm not embracing, then still no need for iddah, family broken. The others will say iddah, Ibn Taymiyyah, various opinions that no, the marriage is fine but no sexual relations. Others say the marriage is fine unless she wants a divorce. Others say the marriage is fine unless a judge breaks it. Others go with the marriage is fine from an istishab point of view. There is no evidence for breaking the marriage. So you've got the differing views. The question is, in this particular case, which one realizes the qawaid? Do you remove harm, or do you create harm if the husband is fine with it and she can carry on with her deen? And they have children. Which realizes the maqasid? In other words, the triangulation is to just have independent assessment, because the qawaid come from the Quran and the Sunnah. The way the maqasid come from the Quran and the Sunnah. And lastly, so we conducted this course with some judges, Sharia court judges in Nigeria, and we came to this subject of triangulation. And when you ask, is it okay? A woman, now then nobody is comfortable with the word rape, but a man forcefully has sexual relations with his wife. What is the normal scenario and context? It is in the case of a forced marriage. Okay? She doesn't want to marry the guy. The family, the father, whatever, insists, and whether she likes it or not, there's a marriage. And the husband wants to teach her a lesson. And he goes and forcefully has his sex with her. She is crying, and she is asking, she comes to court, sees the registrar. I want to put a complaint against my husband. What is the issue? This is what he did to me. And we're asking the judges, will you entertain that case? And you find a lot of confusion. Well, part of marriage is permission for sexual relations. Okay, maybe he shouldn't have done it. You send a message, there should be foreplay, whatever. But I don't think he has done anything wrong, and you see some confusion when you only look at it through the lens of usul. When you look at it from the lens of qawaid, the question is, al-umur bi maqasidiha. What was your own maqasid for forcefully having sexual relations? Was it enhancing mawadda wa rahma and sakina? No, it was about humiliating. Al-ibra lil-haqiqi la lil-alfaz. Sharia goes with what's the reality of what happened, not what you call it. And so if your objective was humiliation, then that's what you did. It's haram to humiliate. Ad-darar yuzal, harm must be eliminated. Did you cause harm? Yes. When we say harm, what level of harm? For the woman that the man forcefully had sex with her, which one would she have preferred? The forced sexual relations, or that he slaps her? And the woman says, I prefer you slap me. And then by qiyas min babi awla, from a higher order, if forcefully having sex with her is worse than slapping, and slapping is haram, then definitely that is haram. If you look at the maqasid, what is the maqasid of forcefully having sex? Is it helping her life, her ird, her dignity? Does it help the family relations? Yeah. If it doesn't, then by looking at it, it becomes easier for the scholars of usul to realize they need to look at the qiyas they are using. Because if idrar can be insulting, she can get divorce and other forms of harm that she could get a judgment for, then she should be able to get a judgment for this. So these are just 5 examples of triangulation. What should one do, or professionals do, when scholars differ? They look for the strongest opinion, which one is in the line. So different things scholars suggest when professionals differ. And sometimes you will go with the position of the leadership, like moon sighting. Sometimes you will go with the, if here it's Shafi madhab, then that's the madhab you want, because if it goes to court, that's going to be the law of the land. If you're in Nigeria, it's Maliki, that's the law of the land. You can't go to the judge and you say, but I'm Hanafi. He tells you, I don't know about Hanafi fiqh. This is the judgment here. So what to do when scholars differ? If it's Islamic finance and a narrow area, you may want to look for a specialist. If it's a cultural area, then you would want to look for something in line with the custom. But it's beyond either or. It's sometimes a combination of these. But whichever one it is dhanni, it is still ijtihad, you will still need the adab of ikhtilaf. And so we conclude by just reminding the interdependence of these. Jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you for your attention. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakumullahu khairan. Sheikh Muhammad Yazim. It's very long and interesting. So I was aware that the slide is a lot, so that's why we started earlier. So while we are going on, as I mentioned, that our dean has a dean council meeting, even the deputy dean himself has another engagement. But while the program is going on, our deputy dean came in. So I want to recognize the presence of our deputy dean, Professor Dr. Toku Moha. Welcome, sir. Because of time, today is Juma. Even some of our colleagues have been asking for the slide, but I told them, inshallah, we will seek for permission so that we can get the slide. It will help us, to expand the scope of our own teaching and learning. So hopefully we can get the slide, inshallah. Because of Juma and not to have trajectory discussion, I only want to entertain only 2 questions, just 2. So after that questions and answering, then there will be a closing remark by our deputy dean, inshallah, and there will be a closing. So if you have a question related to exactly what is discussed, not trajectory, I'm taking us to another village. 3 already. Okay, so I want to have those questions together, then we respond together because of time. So let me start 1, 2, and 3.
Assalamualaikum. I'm Aisha from the Department of Sociology. I just want to ask about the case, for example, because my specialization is gerontology, the issue of sending your parents to a nursing home. That's it.
Assalamualaikum. To be exact, as long as you have been discussing the whole process, I would like to be known with jurist. You prefer to be a person or is a counselor? Like one person can be in 2025, can one human being become a mufti, or you prefer to be a counselor? Like many people will sit together and come up with a decision. Thank you.
Sorry, I yet don't know your CV in detail, but I am very interested if you have any specific book, you can read more about your idea. Thank you.
I'm Amazing Muhammad, PhD student from STEM. So my question is regarding your concept like black and white view. When you have mentioned metaphors of boy, lambs, cows, and so on, and you say the text is clear, النص واضح. So but when it is about النص al-Qur'ani, and the nas there was for a specific time and a specific individuals. But when it is النص al-Qur'ani, this is for all the times and all the ages and all the circumstances. So my question is, the An-Nas al-Qur'ani is complex and interconnected. So is it possible to have the very naive understanding or specific understanding of the Quranic texts as it is possible with the metaphors we have used? And if not, then there should be a spaces of various views and opinions. Sure.
So your response for them, and we go to the next stage.
Thank you. So the issue of parents and nursing homes. Difficult to give a very clear answer because of the diversity of families. And so again, the need to have a very specific question. Some families just have one daughter, or the kind of care that the parents need is more than what the average individual can offer. We don't live in times where you had the clan, the Akila, where there was always a cousin, somebody who could help. Sometimes, especially now, and it's going to become a bigger problem as medical advances are able to keep people alive longer, it's assumed that people who are currently the age of 40 and below would live an average of over 90 years of age. So this is going to be a much bigger concern. So the issue would then be maslahah. What is in the best interest of the parents? In some countries, the state is ready to support. In some countries, there's no state. In some places, the elderly have a family that can take care of things, that can, when my father, Allah yarhamu, who got old, or my mother, she had dementia, she had Alzheimer's, she had Parkinson's. Alhamdulillah, we could afford for a doctor to be coming to visit at the house, but some cannot afford that type of thing. So it's really difficult to give one simple answer other than the general principles of what is in the best interest of the elderly, but also considering what is the capability of the society. In a rural setting, there may be no option. In some places, in Nigeria, like our town, if you say go to old people's home, nobody wants to go there. Yeah. So sorry for not having a simple answer, but just factors to consider, inshallah. Is a fatwa council better as a council or an individual? Generally, you know, the principle is shawirhum fil amr, and there's wisdom in that. The Prophet ﷺ, you know, did consult. And so for important decisions, what you find today is a lot of fatwa councils. For every institution, every bank has its ACE, its committee of experts in the area. So definitely that is the best. But what we are finding is more and more now Islamic associations having fatwa committees. So Iman, Islamic Medical Association, or FEMA, the Federation of Islamic Medical Associations, having a committee that handles fatwa. And they are proactive. They don't wait until there's a problem. The moment there's a problem, okay, what should be done? What, however, I think we need to also be prepared for is micro mujtahids. Situations where you are in your own field, you know what you are facing, and you have no time to consult. A doctor deciding what to do, and they would need some very quick answers. Sometimes it is a lot of headache to educate the alim on the issue to understand and then give his opinion. Yeah, it is sometimes easier to do it the other way around. For you to know the Maqasid, Qawaid, the Usul, the verses, the Hadith, the thing relevant to your field, so that you make a more informed decision. So both important, of course, if there's the luxury of time, and if in society you have the competent people. Sometimes a fatwa council is just who are the popular ulama, not who's a specialist in usul. Yeah, I know a number of fatwa councils in places. When you start looking at who knows what he's talking about, it's unfortunate. Inshallah, I will share, if I have not already done so, Sharia Intelligence. We have this partly in the form of a book where we present Usul, Qawaid and Maqasid we try to make it simple for professionals. Some of the details we presented, we have it mainly in PowerPoint. We're currently in the process of the fifth edition of the book, where we will add. It's getting fatter and fatter, and people don't like fat books, so we divided the book into part 1, part 2. Part 1 was the Usul side, part 2 Qawaid, Maqasid and Triangulation. Yep. And then Quran and areas, Quran and certain Sunnah. So you find the scholars classifying Islamic teachings, Qardawi, a number of others, that there are certain parts that are the thawabit of the deen. These are permanent fixtures of the deen. And some that are part of the mutagayyirat, those that will change with context. So we will always defend ourselves, but how do we defend ourselves? With horses, with air force? Those will change with context. Yes, the Quran is for mankind until the day of judgment, but the meaning of some verses are very clear, muhkamat, others are mutashabihat. And so you will find in some verses of the Quran, the mufassirun have no problem, it's straightforward. How many gods are there? You don't read the Quran and you have more than one conclusion. But when it says, for example, a woman who has been divorced will do thalathata quru, 3 quru, what is the meaning of quru? There you find the differences of opinion coming. Is it the period between the bleeding, or is it the bleeding you are counting? So there you will find the differences in application. So that's why you will find some verses of the Quran are considered, so all the Quran is considered qat'i thubut, nobody argues about the authenticity, but some verses are dhanni thubut, some verses are dhanni dilala. Sorry, what am I saying? Qat'i thubut. Yeah, some verses of the Quran are qat'i thubut, all qat'i thubut, some are qat'i dilala, some are dhanni dilala. Okay, some nobody argues about the meaning. By the time you go, you have one conclusion. But some you go, you have differing opinions. And some of these verses, if you look at every generation and the tafsir they do for some verses, the meaning and the depth starts to get deeper with generations. So those who come from a scientific background would look at a verse. Halaq al-insana min alaq. What does alaq mean? And somebody who has studied that subject may have more depth than somebody who just looks at the linguistic meaning. And that's where the different types of tafsir start to affect the meaning. So yes, so some are fixed and some are open to alternative interpretations. And that was the last question. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakumullah khair. So we've come to the end of the question and answer session. So now I want to invite our Deputy Dean, Professor Dr. Tunku Mohar, for his closing remark. You're welcome, sir.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Sheikh Muhammad Nuruddin Namo, for this presentation, sharing your knowledge with everyone in this room. And on behalf of everyone here too, we thank you very much. Jazakallah. Again, I would also like to thank the coordinator for Islamization of knowledge in our Kuliah, or Associate Professor Dr. Sahid Musari, for organizing this event. And this is the second event that he helped organize, and we are going to have more events, more sharing session like this. What I can say is that the Kuliah is committed to Islamization of knowledge, to uphold this new roadmap of Tawhidic epistemology, and sharing like this made me feel like I'm a student again. I used to study fiqh before, but then I went to political science, and this triangulation, of course, is not only relevant to those in Islamic Revelation heritage, but also to those in the human sciences discipline. So thank you for your participation, and I think there's food after this. So that's all. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, before we end the session, we have a token of appreciation for Sheikh. Has requested, inshallah, for the slide. We'll push to be sure that we can get the slide, especially for research and academic purposes. Also for books, since last weekend, Sheikh has passed to me some of his writings and books, closely like 6 or 7 books. So they will be available in fiqh department's library shelf. So if you want to further read about his writings, his work, you can check with Department of Fiqh, so you can see some of his writings there as reference purposes. So now I want to invite our Deputy Dean, Dr. Thompson Mahar, for the token of appreciation to Sheikh Muhammad bin Leon. So we invite Sheikh. We also invite Professor Misawi, because there will be a photo session.
He's from there.
Why me?
Yeah, please come, Prof. Thank you very much. Thank you. So the Prof is coming?
Yes.
So that we can have a picture together. So after this, there will be a general picture session with everybody. Yes.
So let the Sheikh be in the middle. Okay. Off this, yeah.
Okay.